Now, the untimely death of Rhodes University student Khensani Maseko brought the institution to a standstill today.
It's alleged Khensani was raped on campus in May this year, but the incident was only reported a week ago. Today, the SABC and the university management met to pave the way forward. The university's flags will fly at half-mast while academic activities are halted for 2 days. During this time, the institution and student leaders will run a program to educate and highlight issues of violence against women. Maseko died in an apparent suicide at her Johannesburg home over the weekend. The alleged perpetrator has been served with a notice of suspension pending the outcome of an investigation. The case was never reported to the police, but the university leaders are planning to have an inquest docket opened. Well, of course, students at the Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth have also embarked on protest action and called for a shutdown of campus following the alleged rape of a student on campus there at the weekend. Students maintain that rape culture at universities continues unabated. For more on this, we cross to our reporter Iviwe Poti, who is in Port Elizabeth. Iviwe, good evening to you. I mean, it's obviously a sad day for students, particularly in that part of the Eastern Cape, both at Rhodes University and, of course, in Port Elizabeth. What's the latest?
Well, Bongani, what we can tell you from the ground, specifically when we look at Rhodes University as well, is that today around about 2 o'clock, we know a lot of students actually gathered there at the main campus at Rhodes, to kind of pay tribute and homage, in terms of feeling for other students as well, not only, looking at Khensani's situation, but in terms of the challenges that students are finding themselves when we look at gender-based violence and these, sexual allegations which are taking throughout all the institutions at South Africa. Also here at Nelson Mandela University, early this morning, students gathered, to have a complete shutdown. It's a bit different to what Rhodes University students were doing. Their academic procedures, came to a halt today in terms of having their SRC and as well as their academic heads in a meeting in terms of let's look at how far we've come. Let's look at the things that we've implemented over the years, especially the past 2 years, where we look at students throughout South Africa holding marches and protests such as the silent protest, if you remember, the naked protest, and as well as the pickets that they've been holding throughout the year, specifically last year up until now. But specifically looking at Rhodes, they said, they don't want to picket, they don't want to march because they want to give Khensani respect and as well as her family in this time of mourning. So it was more of just a gathering to pay tribute and respect to her and also look at the issues that we talk about specifically through this month of Women's Month and women's rights.
If you are the question that must be asked now is in terms of the university's procedures to deal with this kind of thing. I mean, we've seen this type of protest, particularly at Rhodes. I'm particularly thinking of the silent protest, which is usually quite a large gathering. Where are we in terms of a counselling service, in terms of clear procedures that victims can follow in terms of getting counselling and reporting rapes when they occur?
While looking at both institutions where the SABC in particular has done stories looking at the issues that students are raising when it comes to safety on campus, the regulations, a student needs to report. There is a counselling process that does happen. We did ask this question earlier at Rhodes University with Mr. Jacobs, head of communications, whom said when the incident was reported last week, yes, the incident did happen a few months ago, but they took it very seriously. They were in communication with the victim. They were in communication with the victim's family. They did start the procedures and processes in terms of handing over a letter to the alleged perpetrator to say that up until a time where the investigation is over, he is suspended up until that time. Unfortunately, a case with the police had not been opened just as yet, but the institution has indicated to us that along with the SRC and other heads of faculty throughout the institution, they're working very closely with SAPS, they're hoping to work with the NPA as well to open an inquest and ensure that a thorough investigation is done to get to the reasons in terms of what actually, made Kensani feel that the only way to deal with this issue is to end her life. Also, for the next 2 days, today including tomorrow, Rhodes University will be holding intensive programs to kind of sensitize all students, male and female, in terms of violating someone else's rights. Not only, in terms of someone you don't know or someone who you just trust, but in a relationship situation as well. When we find that these students are dating but don't know what it means when someone says no, or they believe that when we are in a relationship, you can't be raped. What are those, what happens if we are intoxicated? What happens if we are drunk? And what are the consequences of violating someone's rights or violating someone's body in this manner?
All right, Iviwe Poti, we'll have to leave it with you there in Port Elizabeth. Of course, Kensani Maseko posted as a final message of goodbye on her Instagram that no one deserves to be raped. It really does highlight the conversation that needs to be had about rape culture at university.